This video is the first in the series for the Yamaha MM6 workstation, and in this video we're going to talk a little bit about what makes the MM6 a workstation and also cover briefly some of the capabilities of this keyboard. Let's first talk about what makes the MM6 a workstation. With a lot of traditional workstations, you're going to notice that you have the ability to select many different sounds to play, and you of course can do this with the MM6 by selecting the categories here and then scrolling through the different sounds if you wanted to. Along with being able to select many different sounds to choose from, you also have the ability to change some of the parameters and characteristics of these sounds. This is known as voice editing. So the MM6 provides you with a couple key front panel controls here: the cutoff and resonance, attack and release. And this is going to greatly change some of the tonal characteristics and dynamics of the sound. Any of these edits can be stored into the parameters for that voice that you're editing. Along with these type parameters, you also have the ability to go into some of the submenus here, and you can change some of the effects settings for each of the sounds. So for instance, let's say you have a clean guitar sound, you wanted to add a little bit more reverb to it, you could dial into the reverb send levels and change those if you wanted to. Another thing that makes a keyboard workstation a workstation is the fact that they have sequencers built in, and a sequencer is where you're going to be able to record in the notes that you play into the individual tracks and then play these back. The MM6 has 8 different tracks here that you can record note data into, and you would assign different voices or different instruments to each one of these 8 tracks and record your song as needed. Along with the ability to record in notes that you play in through the keyboard, you also have the ability to record in some pattern playbacks, and this is with the use of the pattern controls over here to the left. You'll notice that there's A, B, C, and D. This controls different sections, so you can switch up which patterns or the playback of the patterns that you're working with during your song play to give it a more realistic drum patterns or accompaniment. Now when I say accompaniment, you also have the ability to use some chord fingering and auto fill-ins, and with these two options lit here when you're using the pattern controls, you can trigger different bass lines and grooves to follow along with the pattern playback and also record those into the pattern track. So you can really very easily and quickly put together a song and store this. Now you have a lot of different ways to store these. You can store these internally via user banks. You can also send and receive data via the USB connections on the back panel here. USB port also doubles as a connection to be used with some digital audio workstation software, where you can use the MM6 as a MIDI controller. So you can use the keys, you can also use the pitch bend and modulation to change VST or vocal instruments that are within audio recording software. So it's a very flexible workstation for the money. It has a limited amount of features compared to the high-end workstations or the flagship class workstations, but there is still quite a bit of options here that can be covered and more easily explained via some video tutorials. So in the next videos I'm going to cover some of the other options in detail, starting with voice editing.